So a few years ago, I was really struggling with one of my sisters, and we were just at it. And it had really become toxic. Well, we always spend holidays together. Now, if I hadn't been spending years building mental resilience and emotional control mechanisms in my life that help me to avoid conflict in these difficult situations, it would have turned out really poorly. But luckily, I was able to get through not just that family gathering, but many more that came in the future. Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me, as always, Doc Jess.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Jess, we love doing these type of talks right around the holidays because it gives a lot of people anxiety when they're thinking about having to face friends or family members that they may have had negative interactions with in the past. Now, I attribute a lot of this to what we call the negative bias, because you have one or two bad instances with somebody, a friend or family member, and that really paints the picture for how you see the rest of those interactions going, is in that negative behavior. Now, that's not always true because our brain is building a pattern off of old information. And it's unwilling to take in new information that doesn't necessarily fit with the old pattern.
Sure.
And so for every one negative experience, we have to have like 5 to 7 positive experiences to be able to counterbalance that.
For that negative bias to not subconsciously creep in and take over.
That's
Sure.
That's right. And so that's like the simple version of how I manage a lot of those interactions. Just knowing that I have to consciously make the effort to create relationship around those negative interactions. Now that can be, it's oversimplifying it, but it is vital to just understand that basic concept of how the negative bias works and how to build relationship before you get into those situations. Or if you have a negative interaction, build relationship post so that way you can, regain some of that familiarity, that family, that friendship that may have been damaged.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to, in this journey of that emotional grit or emotional resilience that we're building, to understand the difference between a genuine negative bias and dysfunctional patterns in your family.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the times, if you are the generation to start pulling away from those dysfunctional and toxic patterns, you're going to be the villain. And you have to get to a point where you just accept, I'll be the villain. Because if you're pulling away from those dysfunctional, toxic patterns, you're going to be called, oh, you're self-righteous. Oh, you're holier than thou. Oh, you think you're better than us. And those are just very common phrases that dysfunctional and toxic families will put on you when you try to separate yourself from those dysfunctional and toxic patterns. And so if it's a genuine dysfunctional and toxic pattern, that's different than a negative bias.
Yes,
and
100%.
And they're both very real and they're both very true. And it's only really, you have to have the emotional maturity and discernment to know if it's a negative bias or if this is a dysfunctional, toxic pattern that I do need to set up some boundaries around.
What are those differences? What does that look like?
It's a really great question. A dysfunctional, toxic pattern is going to be that repetitive stepping over of boundaries. So a boundary is not controlling the other person. A boundary is only controlling you. And boundaries, we've talked about this before. It's another, what do you call it? Pop culture, psych pop culture. Like, oh, I'm setting boundaries. No, you're avoiding hard conversations, right? And that's another thing, is like, there's a gray line there too. Like, there are some times that you have to actually set up a definitive boundary. And then there's a time that you have to just go in head first and have difficult conversations or work through difficult things. And so the difference there would be, as you're learning the emotional intelligence to decipher the two, the foundation is understanding what a boundary is. And the foundation of a boundary is, I'm only controlling myself. And so if the dysfunctional pattern is, everybody at the gathering gets drunk and you don't want to be around that, the boundary you can set is me and my family, I don't want my girls around drunk people. And so my boundary is we'll come at the beginning of the event and we'll hang out and we'll love on you guys and we can have some family time. But when the drinking starts happening, that's when we're going to go ahead and take our leave. We're not judging you. We're not self-righteous. That's just the boundary that I'm going to put on me and my family, that we just choose not to participate or be around that. The dysfunctional toxic pattern then is that receiving end of that boundary that you're putting on yourself is, oh, you're different now. Oh, you're self-righteous now. Oh, you think you're better than everybody now. When that's not the message and that's not even the heart behind it. It's just simply a boundary of stepping out of that kind of behavior that you don't want to participate in anymore, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. I mean, Easter is coming. It's going to be here in just a few days. And so this is an opportunity for us to create those boundaries. And I love what you said. It's boundaries that you put on yourself, not on other people. Because that's what we see a lot of times is, well, I'm setting a boundary because you want somebody else to do something.
Yeah. Well, I fell victim to it. Like my first, what I call my army marriage, right? It was like, we met in Iraq. We got married 2 weeks after we got back from Iraq. Like all the briefings are like, wait 6 months before you make any major decision. And their major decisions were like, don't buy a car, marriage wasn't even like, that's like wait a year and you're trauma bonded. So anyways, and that marriage was just a hot mess. We were both a hot mess, just fresh back from war. We were both struggling with PTSD and established some really, really bad habits. And one thing I learned from that failed marriage was I needed to have better, solid, assertive communication skills because I was more of a passive people pleaser. And just because that looks safer or nicer on the outside doesn't mean it's not still destructive to the relationship. It's still a part I played in the destruction of the relationship, not speaking up in an assertive yet loving way and setting boundaries for myself, things like that. And so in my ignorance as a barely 20s, and when the marriage dissolved, and then I was a single mom for a couple years, and then I met Billy, and I thought, well, I'm going to set a boundary. You're not going to talk to me like that. Like,
did that work out?
We are still married.
No, but setting that boundary on other people, that doesn't
yes.
work out really.
So I didn't even know it then. No, it didn't work out. It's almost like telling your wife when she's like worked up, calm down. Yeah. Never works.
Should work.
No, never. Yeah. So you're not going to talk to me like that, right? I'm thinking like I learned from that last marriage, I got to stand up for myself. So I think I'm doing the right thing when at the end of the day, I don't allow other people to speak to me that way. When you're ready to speak to me with respect, I'm totally here for you. That's me setting a boundary of myself, what I will tolerate and what I will not tolerate. Just like the family that might get drunk during these family events, right? It's not, you guys can't drink.
Yeah.
Or we're not coming over. It's when it gets to a certain threshold, we're going to remove ourselves just because we choose not to be around that. And that it should be a very fair assessment that, okay, cool. I'm not asking you not to drink. I'm not controlling you or telling what you can and cannot do. If you want us to be a part of it, like you say you do, you'll hold off on getting completely toasted until my young children are ready to depart, and then you can do whatever you want. And it's kind of the concept that I take, parents of older children through when they say, well, our teenager is doing this and this and this. I'm talking extreme things like drugs or sleeping around, something like that. And they say, well, I don't want to kick my kid out. I say, you never kick your kid out. Your kid has the autonomy at this point in their life to choose to stay or choose to leave. So these are the boundaries of our home. This is, if you want to live here, you'll show us that you're choosing to live here by coming home at a certain time, by abiding by these reasonable rules. If you choose not to live here, that's on you. I'm not kicking you out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I had to do that with my youngest son, Austin. I said, if you want to continue to live here, these are the rules that you have to follow. If you don't want to follow them, that's fine. You just can't live here anymore. You'll have to live somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I put those boundaries in place. to protect the rest of the family.
And him. Because if you allowed it to keep going, then you are at fault for enabling the behavior.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I never kick other people out of my life. I never defriend people. I let them choose whether they want to be a part of my life with the standards that I live by, or they can choose to not be a part of my life. And it's just that kind of paradigm shift of saying, oh, okay, I'm not kicking my kid out. They're choosing to leave. Or I'm not kicking the family out. They're choosing to not be a part of my life.
And here's what I've learned about the brain. When you don't manage these things and you just go into the situation with no plan, with no sort of system set up, you just show up, you've been having anxiety about the situation already. So
Yeah.
your brain is already focused on the negative because it's living in that old pattern. And so now your brain is hypercritical of everything everybody is doing because
Mhm.
you're assuming that it's going to end up the way it's been before. And so now your brain is looking for all of these hypercritical things to prove what you believed in the past was true to still be true.
Yeah.
And so then we always look for those hypercritical things, those negative things, because that's what we've set our brain up to search for. And our brain is not set up to search for truth. It's set up to search for danger.
Yeah.
To keep you alive. So when you program it of, hey, I'm nervous about going in to this situation because it's turned out bad before,
Mhm.
your brain is looking for all of those other markers. And when it finds them, it starts triggering you. You start getting more cortisol, more adrenaline. It reduces your capacity to actually have good cognitive thought, to problem solve, to respond out of kindness, because now you're in survival mode when you show up.
Yeah.
So when you don't make a plan, when you don't understand the way your brain and body work, you're setting yourself up for failure when you go into those situations.
Yeah.
And then when the negative thing happens, you're like, see, I knew it was going to be like this.
Yeah. It all comes down to self-awareness.
People call it a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like the buzzword people use, but on a neurobiological level, that's what's happening. Your brain is running on an outdated operating system. And there's a good chance it could turn out that way, but there's also an equal chance of it not.
Yeah.
It depends on what information you input in on what you're going to get out. Now, your brain is not wired for growth. It's actually wired for survival, but you can rewrite the programming. And Jess is going to show us the 6-pack method. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Aaron, this is my favorite tool. It's called the 6-pack tool. And what it is coming up with 6 alternate thoughts to the one negative thought that is subconsciously wired. What it does is it starts opening up other neural pathways to start thinking of other things rather than just that stuck point that you're on. And what it means is that eventually, the more you practice this, the more your brain is going to start being able to entertain those as potential truths.
So you're going to open up alternate pathways in your brain,
Yes.
giving you more options in those critical moments.
Yes.
So you can act from a cognitive side instead of an emotional one.
Metaphor or a practical way of thinking about this 6-pack rule could be if you're a roommate, right? Most of us have lived a certain season of our life where we had to be a roommate with somebody. And as you're growing up and pushing for autonomy, there's things when you cohabitate with people that kind of get under your skin because we're all different. So think about Susie, and she has 2 other roommates that she lives with. And Vanessa is great. She stays to herself and doesn't do anything, just is always a big help. But Rhonda is younger. She's 19, just out of her parents' house, and she always leaves her cereal bowl out in the morning. And Susie's automatic stuck thought is going to go towards, she is so selfish and lazy. And so what does that thought lead to? What emotion would she's so selfish and lazy? What does that lead to?
Anger, frustration,
Bitterness, resentment.
Yeah.
Okay, what can you do with those emotions?
Nothing. You can have a really bad day
Yes.
because now you're programming your brain to look for other things that make you angry, other things that make you frustrated, other things that you're resentful about.
Exactly. So the 6-pack rule is really fun because it doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be positive. It doesn't even have to be realistic. So this is an example of what those 6-packs would be. I like to throw in a funny one too to kind of get me giggling. So the first alternate thought of my 6-pack is she grew up on a different planet and they had alien maids that came around and picked up after them all the time. You're like, okay, yeah, right. Still, it's still an alternate thought, okay? Another alternate thought could be, oh, I do remember she has ADHD. And she does get kind of forgetful about things, and maybe just a small conversation. She'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was doing that, right? The third thought could be she came from a house where her mom did everything for her. Picked up after that, just that mom. We know a couple moms like that.
We do.
We do. And so she never thought about picking up after herself. Another thought could be that she has a different routine, that maybe in the morning she rushes, and then as soon as she gets home from work, she says, okay, now I'm going to go and look around the house of where I left some things. And so maybe it's not intentional, but maybe just a nice conversation about, hey, do you think maybe we can switch that up and get up just maybe 5 minutes earlier so you can do that quick sweep before you go to work?
So the last one for me, I do it when I was single, not with a roommate, but I would do this. So I would use my cereal bowl in the morning, and then I would just fill it with water, kind of rinse it out real quick, fill it with water, and then put it in the sink. I would just leave it there. It was not washed, not put away, nothing. It would just be there. When I came home, I was going to use that same bowl to eat spaghetti.
Perfect. Yeah. So maybe she was in a routine of something like that. But you see how each one of these other 6 thoughts leads you to a different emotion that you can actually do something with? So if she was raised in an alien community, that leads you to a little bit of comical relief and you can kind of like brush it off. But if it happens all the time, that might not be the greatest alternate thought. You might need to come up with something else. But even thinking, oh, she has ADHD, it might give you a little more empathy and grace and hopefulness that, oh, maybe it just needs a conversation. Some of these other alternate thoughts leads to a different emotion that leads to a better potential outcome. So the 6-pack rule that you want to practice this on are those automatic thoughts that lead you to anger, frustration, sadness, bitterness, resentment, because you can't do anything with those emotions. Those emotions are real and we're going to have them. I'm not saying just suck it up, buttercup, push them away and don't deal with them. You have to still deal with them. But part of the foundational layer of dealing with them is, okay, how can I think about this to have a different emotional outcome that I can actually do something with the thought? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I actually just taught very similar to this on Sunday because I do my free mental health group. And so I talk about this, but more of an introspective way. It's like, what is that one negative thing, that voice that keeps coming back that is preventing you from achieving the goals that you really want? What is that one negative voice? And then help them rewrite that to something positive. So very similar to what you're talking about. It's a different instance, and we're looking for a different outcome, but it's that same tool. It's that 6-pack. But I just had them build one, and then just so they get the routine down.
Yeah.
So then they could eventually build out the 6. But it's the exact same tool that you're talking about, but I used it for being introspective on what is that big goal that you're afraid of trying, and that voice. So that's day 1. I had them like, what is that big goal that you're afraid? And then day 2 is, what's that negative voice saying to you why you don't do it? And then day 3, day 4. So I walk them through 5 days of just doing one single thing. And by the end of it, I have them rewrite that negative messaging. That can become a subroutine that they run. Anytime that negative thought comes up, they just play that subroutine.
And listen, all this kind of stuff feels cliche. It feels cheesy. It feels in the beginning like, that won't work for me. But the more consistently you do it and practice it, the more it becomes second nature, and and it compounds. It's just like working out your biceps at the gym. If you want bigger biceps and you go to the gym once and you hit muscle failure, sure, you're going to feel a little swollen that day. More blood's going to get there. But in a week, if that's all you did, that all of those gains are going to be gone. If you work out your biceps to muscle failure 3 times a week for 6 months, you're going to have rock huge biceps. So it's not something you do one and done and say, oh, it didn't work for me. It's something that you actively practice for an extended period of time, and then you start to get results.
People call it muscle memory, but
Yeah.
what it is, it's neuroplasticity.
Yes.
It's building very thick neural pathways in a very specific pattern to help you achieve goals, is what it is. And you see motivational speakers talk about this, about mindset and about all these different things. But really, when it comes down to it, this is what's really physically happening inside your brain body.
Yeah.
So I love these motivational speakers, but they don't ever really tell you like what the mechanics are of how it's working. They just tell you it works, try it, and you try it and it works. And you're like, okay, but we actually break it down and show you how it works and why it works. And so if you guys want more stuff, check out thefirstonesfree.com. It's where we're bringing on guests to the show that can share with you other tools and techniques to help you on your mental health journey. Every Sunday, 6 o'clock, I do a free 20-minute class on mental health. And coming here soon, Jess is going to be doing one on marriage. Like, subscribe, share, because we want to do 3 things here on the Mental Health Janitors. We want to educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. So for the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sergeant Q.
I'm Doc Jess.
And we're out.